Hello and welcome to yesterday's Airlines, and it is time to take a look at the Gemini Jets June 2022 release announcements and rank those from Supersonic to scrap metal. This is the second month of doing these release tier ranking videos, so hopefully you're finding them useful. And Gemini have done me a favour because unlike Phoenix, who just released 22 announcements, and NG, who did 27, you can rely on Gemini not to release that many models in 1 month, which makes doing these videos a lot less painful. So Gemini have announced only 9 models, which goes up to 12 if you accept that the flaps down versions are separate models. But for the purpose of this review, I will treat the flaps down models as the same as the flaps up versions of the same things. So Gemini's last month, they did quite well, I thought, but unfortunately you can never really tell until you see the photos, and even then the angle that Gemini uses, sometimes you can't even tell from those photos. Unfortunately, one of the models that I was really looking forward to last month, the National Airlines 727-200, that one looks like it's got an issue. It looks like some pillock in the factory has attached hush kits to all of them, and obviously since National was taken over by Pan Am in 1980, they weren't hush kitting their 727s, so that's really ruined that model, which is a real pain because I really wanted to get that. As far as I understand it, Gemini are furious about this as well, and it's a mistake in the factory, and the samples that they were sent did not have the hush kits on, much like the month before the sample that they were sent did not have gigantic tyres on and that Loganair Saab. So Gemini obviously having some issues with jcwings getting quality output from the factory. It's not unusual. It's also not just a Gemini issue. Everybody has issues with their factory at time to time, it seems. So that's just unfortunate, but it does unfortunately mean that that National 77 is not one that I'm willing to purchase, because it'll just stand out like a sore thumb, and every time I see it I'll look at that and go, that's, you know, it's like putting, I don't know, it's like putting winglets on a DC-6. So, no, not going to happen. Okay, anyway, on to this month's releases. Now, obviously, I write at yesterdaysairlines.com primarily, so check out the website. Follow me on Instagram at yesterairlines and on Facebook, because I have a lot of content going out through those channels, and I have connections with the majority of the manufacturers, good ones, aside primarily from Gemini and Phoenix, but everyone else. So, you know, I do find out things, and I do get access to models and samples that others don't necessarily get. So check out the channels and like and subscribe, and don't forget to leave comments if you agree or disagree with what I'm about to say about this month's Gemini releases. Okay, so this month Gemini look like they've produced a very Gemini month of models, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's no interest to be had on this release set, though I have seen some criticism of it from people. I guess the reality is you're never going to please everybody all of the time, so that's not too surprising that there are going to be people who aren't thrilled about the models that are being released all the time. So, as always, I'm going to run through each of these, and a lot of the photos that I'm going to use for comparisons here are going to be jcwings pictures, and that's primarily because they share molds with Gemini Jets anyway, and I don't buy that many Gemini because they don't tend to fit my criteria. I tend to get more jcwings. So they're not necessarily always pictures of a Gemini release, but fundamentally they're coming from the same place and using the same mold, so it shouldn't be a problem. And we're going to start off looking at the 777s. So first up, we've got an American Airlines 777 in the current livery. And it is probably no coincidence that in the very last video I did, the Phoenix releases, Phoenix announced exactly the same aircraft, which is highly unusual for Phoenix. And I said in that video that Gemini have released quite a few of these, but always on the old mould. So they've made, from what I can see, 6 previous versions but always using the old seamed mould. That mould has now been replaced, and it seems like Gemini has got through the majority of the releases that have been sitting in its warehouse using the old moulds, and now they've got on to the new jcwings editions, which are vastly superior. So the jcwings 777-300 mould is excellent. It is probably my favourite of the existing 777-300 moulds, and it's up against some really stiff competition because you've got the excellent Aviation 400 mould and now the new ngmodels ones as well. But I really like the jcwings mould. It is really good, and I've got a few of those. The only problem is obviously JC never get them out on time, but Gemini do. So this is a model which is going to come in flaps up and flaps down, and that's how I know that it's going to be using the new jcwings mould. So for me, obviously this is bread and butter Gemini material, but it's going to be substantially better than the previous efforts that they've made. And the last time they made one of these was 2019, so 3 years ago. It's not a model I'm going to collect, but it's a model I could consider buying, to be honest. And with this mould and such a popular airline, I think it should sell well. And it'll probably be better than the effort the Phoenix are going to make, because I think the jcwings mould is better than the Phoenix one. So for me, this one, even though it's a pretty ordinary release in many ways, it's actually quite exciting too. So I'm going to put this up into high flyer territory. Now next up we've got the airline which kind of probably is the airline that defines Gemini Jets in the modern times, and that's Emirates. There's almost always an Emirates release every month or two, and this gets a lot of people's backs up, including mine sometimes, to be honest. But once again, looking at Gemini 777 releases, or just Emirates 777 releases, there have been 25, and there have been lots of Gemini versions, but most of them have been wearing some form of special scheme. And looking back over them, all of them, I think, except maybe this one, let's have a look, is that one? Almost all of them, anyway, except perhaps, no, even that one, all of them have used the old Gemini seamed mould again. So once again, Gemini are now getting into the new JC moulds, and this one comes also in flaps up and flaps down, so it's definitely using the JC mould. It's going to be really nice, and it is the only version which is going to be this good. And looking through other, it's a long time since anyone else did an Emirates 777. Looks like Phoenix have done one in the past, and Dragon have done some, but that was eons ago. So this one actually, again, even though it's very standard for Gemini, I actually feel like it's quite a good release. It's got no, whistles and buttons on it. It's going to be the vanilla Emirates scheme, which for me makes it perhaps more interesting. It's a model again which I could see getting for my Xinlong airport diorama if I had that sort of cash just to go around throwing models, buy models for model airports rather than display. I'm going to give a high flyer. I know that might surprise some people, but actually I think it's going to be quite a good model. Okay, last up on the 777s, we've got a Lufthansa cargo release, and once again, checking through what's been made already, nobody has made a Lufthansa cargo 777-200 in the modern scheme at all. Herpa have got one announced, but the Herpa mould is going to be weak, and it probably, God knows when it will come out anyway, so I can ignore that. Herpa just mean nothing to me in 400 scale, really. So this is a new model. Again, it's a really standard Gemini territory Lufthansa, very Gemini-esque airline, but it's going to be on that great new jcwings mould again, because once again this one comes up, flaps down, and so this one has a huge potential to be a good model. I think it will be a good model. Unfortunately for me, Lufthansa has a really, really crap livery nowadays, and I don't really care too much for cargo releases either. So for me, this one is just going up into the workhorse area. It's very workhorsey, but at the same time, I think it'll be a good release. Okay, so that takes care of the 777s. Next up, we have a 7879 in the colours of Latam, and once again, Latam is a fairly Gemini-friendly airline. But looking through the releases, it surprises me that Gemini have never made a Latam 7879. And looking at the releases, there's one from Hogan, which is probably awful, and there are two from Phoenix, and one of those has got a Brazilian registration and not a Chilean registration, and this one's got a Chilean reg. So it's been a long time and since someone produced a Latam 787, since 2016 when Phoenix made their last one. How good this model is depends entirely on the mould that they use, fundamentally. This one doesn't come in flaps up and flaps down, so it's hard to tell if it's going to be using the old seamed Gemini mould or if it's going to be using the excellent new jcwings mould. So it really is a bit challenging. I'm going to suggest that it probably is using the new jcwings mould, and in that regard I think that this is actually a high flyer model because it hasn't been made many times and it's a very core airline and it's good mould. However, if it is using the old Gemini mould, then it will be up in the gas guzzler territory. So bear that in mind, maybe wait for some pictures, look for the wing seam. If it is the old mould, then probably gas guzzler. If it's the new mould, high flyer for me. Okay, the halfway mark takes us to Qantas, Qantas A380. Am I surprised to see an A380 this month from Gemini? No, not at all, and that's possibly because of the AV400 announcements. But they haven't actually announced a Qantas version, and neither have Phoenix or jcwings in this enormous avalanche of A380s that everyone's suddenly releasing. So Gemini maybe had this in the pipeline anyway. Hard to tell. It's not the first time that they've made this livery on a Qantas A380. Obviously there have been quite a few Gemini Qantas A380s, but only one wearing this scheme, which was made in 2018, so it's been 4 years since they last made one. And Phoenix recently made one last year, which is obviously on the good Phoenixmodels. So yeah, this is going to be using the jcwings A380. It's not the greatest mould in the universe. It's not dreadful, you know, and they can look quite nice, but fundamentally there are aspects of it which are incorrect, especially the nose shape. So this one, it's going to be fine. I imagine Gemini's printing's good as long as it all, you know, is in one piece. It'll be good. But for me, it's very much a workhorse release. I don't think their A380 is bad enough to be gas guzzling territory. But it's not good enough to be high flyer either, I would say. Okay, now on to the star release for me, a Frontier Airlines Convair 580. Now the CV580 is a type which Gemini really has exclusive access to because jcwings never use them all because nobody outside the States pretty much operated 580s, at least not many got outside the States anyway. Love to see an Air Chatham's one, by the way, Gemini, if you're listening. But it's going to be awesome. Gemini dribble out these Convair 580s at an incredibly slow rate, like one a year if you're lucky, something like that, which is frustrating. But what does give me hope is that when you look at Gemini's releases, they've made, I think, 11 or 12 in the 200 scale on their what looks like an excellent 200 scale 580 mold. And what they've been doing is basically they've been reusing the liveries to make the 400 scale versions. So it fills me with confidence that eventually all of those 200 scale Convair 580s will get out in 400 scale, because so far they've made a Lugany, North Central, the Federal Aviation Administration, Republic, and now this Frontier release, which means that there is potential for them to make Frontier Saul Bass, which obviously would be a massive seller, I feel, American Eagle, Continental Express, and United Express, and a Northwest Airlines 580 as well. So all of those could be coming. They've also made in 200 scale a pair of Aspen Airways 580s. I'd love to see those, and I'm not sure if they'll get into 400 scale as well. So there's some really good releases which I think Gemini will get around to in the future. But for this month, we've got Frontier Airlines wearing its 1960s livery, or 1960s, 70s livery with this crescent and the arrow, and it's a nice scheme. You know, it's a very classic kind of scheme. It's quite restrained compared to the Saul Bass from the 70s, 80s, but it's a nice scheme. It's going to look nice. And looking at the 580 mold that they're using, yeah, it isn't perfect. You know, the undercarriage is a little bit chunky, and it does tend to nose sit slightly as well, in the sense like it's just a bit nosed down. But yeah, conversely, sometimes it tail sits when you try and put it level. But beggars can't be choosers. It's generally a nice mold. It's had aerials attached to it in recent times by JC, which is nice as well. So they're keeping an eye on it. And the last release, the Republic one, was really nice. So I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be an excellent little release, and it's nice to see that Gemini, you know, haven't given up on classics. As long as they don't hush kit all of them, then, you know, they are dribbling out one or two a month, and that's nice. So for me, obviously, this is going to be a Supersonic. This is my favourite release of the month from Gemini. So, so far, it's looking really good this month. 3 high flyers and 1 supersonic, and the other 2 have been workhorse. So we've got 3 models left, and this is where things take a little bit of a dive, because we've got a couple of 737s. So first up, we've got a United Airlines 737-700. It's the same model, I believe, that NG made recently, and the NG mold just banks this jcwings mold. So I don't really think there's any reason for anyone to be acquiring this if they can get a copy of the NG version, unless, of course, jcwings have got their things together and they've got their new 73G mold out, because it looks like they're making this wedge tail version, and that has a new base mold to it, so presumably there will be a new 73G for them too eventually. But JC is so slow at mold production that I doubt it is. I almost certainly will be using the previous jcwings 73G, which I just don't really like. It just doesn't look good. It's kind of chunky and a little bit ugly. I've got a couple from jcwings and I try and avoid them because I don't really like them. So for me, the mold is going to make this one a non-buyer, even if I was interested in buying modern United Airlines. And it's the same as NG have already done. So this one's a gas guzzler from my perspective. Next up, we've got Transavia, a 737-800 with winglets. Transavia has obviously gone through a Transavia formation, so to speak. Because it used to be a classic kind of charter airline, and now it's become this kind of low-cost airline for the Air France KLM group. And it's got I just don't like the livery, I have to say. It's a really bland livery. For a little while, Transavia had a much cooler livery, with a ring that went around the forward fuselage, and that was awesome. But this livery's boring. Also, once again, it's already been made by NG Models. And in fact, there are 2 NG Models releases, which look like they were in the same scheme to me. But, it's just the winglets that are different. It's the winglets. And so why would you need the Gemini version? Because it's going to be, again, using the jcwings 737-800 mold, which is, it's just okay. You know, it's not great. And the engines tend to drag a bit, and the shape isn't great, and the nose gear's too big. And, you know, it's not a great mold. It's okay. It's not great. So for me, you know, again, there's no real reason to get in this, and it's not really going to be doing anything that hasn't been done better by NG already. So gas guzzler again for me for this one. And that leaves us with the last model, which is the Max release for this month, and that is a Lufthansa Lockheed C130J. And I have to say that I don't know too much about the Max releases. I've never really paid too closer attention to them. But actually looking at this, I think there's a lot of potential here. I've had a look at some of the pictures of the Royal Australian Air Force release they made last year using this mould. And I have to say the mould looks really nice. It's got some really nice detail, and it looks kind of cool and different. I mean, obviously being a C130J, it's got different props and it's longer fuselage, and it looks like a really nice mould. So that really, you know, gives me a lot more excitement over it than I thought I might have. It also looks like this Lufthansa version has an aerial refueling probe as well, which the RAF one didn't. So yeah, I think this one could be potentially good. My only issues are that looking at their previous Australian one, the cockpit windows are all wrong. And also the nose cone printing looks wrong as well. It just doesn't match what a real Herc would have. So yeah, that does give me a little bit of pause if I was buying military stuff. Having said that, I actually did like the look of the RAF one, even with those issues. So for me, I'm going to put this one in high flyer. I think it's actually quite interesting and exciting, and I think the MAX is an area which Gemini are exploiting well and don't have a lot of competition in, and are producing some interesting types and models. And the fact that it's not just a US Air Force version, that it's from Germany, it makes it more interesting still. So for me, I think that one actually is going to be quite nice, and I'll put it into high flyer. Okay, so that is my roundup for this month of the Gemini releases. Yeah, they're not bad, to be honest. I know that I think a lot of collectors would like to see more regional jets, but they've been doing quite a few recently. And this is quite a standard month in that you've got American, Emirates, Latam, Qantas, and Lufthansa, which are all really core Gemini Airlines, NG as well. So in many ways, it's quite bland. But the models are going to be an improvement on the previous versions that have been made in, at least 3 of the cases. It'll be interesting to see what that 787 is. But there's also some good outline models here. The Hercules and the Convair 580 are good and quite unique, and that's not bad. Considering Gemini only make 9 or 10 models a month, they're never going to please everybody, and especially when they've got to meet the needs of commercial retailers and contracts with airlines. So yeah, not bad, not spectacular by any means, but not bad. Okay, so that's my roundup finished. Thanks very much for watching. See you next time.